In Battery Park, Lower Manhattan, you'll see a monument that reads, "In memory of the Walloon Settlers, who came over to America in the New Nederland, under the inspiration of Jesse de Forest." So after half a dozen videos of me referring to New Netherland as a Dutch colony, now I'm telling you that it's not even Dutch, but Walloon? Well, not exactly. It's still very much a Dutch colony, even if the first settlers weren't exactly Dutch. The colony was still controlled, organized, and chartered by a Dutch company, and the Dutch language was the only one allowed as the governing language. But with that being said, the Walloons played a large role in New Netherland, and that is the topic of this video. But before I get too deep into this video's topic, I first want to say, if you're new to the channel, welcome. On this channel, I talk about a variety of different geography-related topics. This month, I have 3 more Dutch-related videos planned, on top of the one that you're watching now, such as how the Netherlands helps other countries with their water problems, and 2 videos on the Dutch discovery of Australia. If these topics sound interesting to you, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell if you want to get notifications for new uploads. Now back to this video's topic. By the 1620s, the Netherlands had recognized the potential as a profitable venture in what would later be named New York Bay and the surrounding area. It had beavers, timber, and hospitable natives that could be traded with. It could also be used as a center of Dutch trade in the New World. The Dutch were also motivated by their rivals, the Spanish, who were expanding their own empire and trade networks in the Americas. However, the area would need permanent settlers to make this work. But times were good in the Netherlands due to its growing trade empire. It was difficult to convince your average person to sell and live on the other side of the Atlantic in the dangerous wilderness. But the Netherlands was home to many poor refugees that had come to the country due to wars and religious persecution. Among them, Brownists, Baptists, Huguenots, Fifth Monarchy men, Jews, and Walloons. Walloons have been described as both a distinct ethnic group and a linguistic community within the southern region of what is today the country of Belgium. Walloons speak French, or dialects of French, such as the language Walloon, versus the northern region of Belgium that speaks Flemish, a Dutch dialect. In modern times, Walloon is often used to describe all residents of the southern region, Wallonia, not just those that identify as being Walloon. Most of the Walloons that were seeking asylum in the Netherlands settled in the city of Leiden, as did many other refugees. In fact, 1/3 of Leiden's population was a refugee at this time, and it was the same place that was home to the English Pilgrims for 12 years before they settled in the New World. Around this time, the Dutch West India Company, or GWC for short, which had a monopoly over Dutch trade in the Atlantic region, was offering land for 6 years of service to the company. This was attractive to some of these groups, including the Walloons. Some Walloon refugees had already been making attempts to find a passage to the New World. The man mentioned on this memorial, Jesse de Forest, had the desire to establish a colony in the New World so that him and his fellow Walloons could practice their Reformed Protestant Christianity without persecution. In February of 1621, de Forest sent a petition to the English ambassador to The Hague. It applied for permission to follow the Puritans to America and settle about 50 families, most of which were Walloon, but also some French Huguenots. The Virginia Company agreed to the proposal, but it came with some restrictions. One was that the settlers could not dwell together in an autonomous colony, and so de Forest declined. He then sought permission from the Dutch, who were in need of volunteers for their own settlements. De Forest let the GWC know that an offer was on the table from the English, but they'd rather go with the GWC. De Forest's proposal to settle in the Americas was accepted. In July of 1623, 11 heads of families left on a GWC ship to size up the situation in Guyana, which seemed to offer good prospects for migration. However, a raid launched by the Portuguese from Brazil on a Dutch colony in the region convinced the men that this area was not ideal for starting a settlement, and Jesse de Forest died there due to an illness. But his children would later move to New Netherland, and his son would serve on the Council of 9 men, which replaced the Council of 12, a group of men chosen by the residents of New Netherland to advise the director of the colony. Around the time of the scouting of Guyana, the GWC decided it wanted to populate what was by then being called New Netherland, and it recruited from the same group that had been led by de Forest. In March of 1624, 30 families, mostly Walloon Protestants, but many French Huguenots as well, set sail under the command of Cornelius Jacobson May and landed in May of that year on Nutten Island, now Governor's Island. Only 18 of them actually stayed on Manhattan Island. The rest spread out across the area. The largest portion were left at Fort Orange, which is modern-day Albany. But later that year, the threat of attack from rival European nations prompted the directors of the GWC to formulate a plan to protect the entrance to the Hudson River. This included the building of a fort and the relocation of many families in the area to the tip of Manhattan. But before doing so, a famous exchange took place. You've probably heard the story of how Manhattan became a Dutch possession. It was purchased from the natives for $24 worth of household goods. That transaction was made by Peter Nieu, who was at the time the third director of New Netherland, and himself a Walloon. There is a rock with a plaque describing the event at the site where the transaction is thought to have taken place. Nieu was eventually fired from his position as director, for reasons that are unclear. But just a few years later, on behalf of the Swedish government, he led the establishment of New Sweden, which covered what is today parts of Delaware, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. There are a few places named after Nieu. The plaza in front of the Staten Island Ferry, a playground in Lower Manhattan, and possibly a small street in a suburban neighborhood in Delaware. The Walloons in the New World sent back letters to the Netherlands, describing their experiences in positive terms. Fertile land and no hostilities with the natives. These letters would influence others to immigrate to New Netherland. And the rest is history. In 1924, the United States issued the Huguenot Walloon half-dollar to commemorate the 300-year anniversary of the arrival of these first settlers. I'm going to end this video with a quick story about an 18-year-old Walloon woman named Catalina Tricot and a 19-year-old Flemish man named Joris Rapalje, both of whom were among the first settlers of New Netherland. With no family present to witness the ceremony, the two married on January 21, 1624, at the Walloon Church in Amsterdam. Alone in the world, and with nothing to lose, the teenagers left the Netherlands aboard a ship for the New World just 4 days later. The couple were among the first to purchase land in Manhattan. They built 2 houses on Pearl Street. They obtained a cow, and later moved their homestead to a larger trace of farmland across the river in Brooklyn. In 1641, Rapalje was elected to the Council of 12 Men, the predecessor to the Council of 9. The couple had 11 children. Their first is considered the first European born in what would become New York. One of their direct descendants, John Rapalje, would serve as a member of the New York State Assembly in the 1770s. The number of their descendants has been estimated at about 1 million. There is even a town named after one of their descendants, all the way out in the state of Montana. 2 young, alone, and poor immigrants, nobodies when they left Europe, went on to become leaders of their community and created a better life for themselves, their children, and maybe even their descendants. This couple was among the first to live what would become known as the American Dream. If you enjoyed this video, I highly recommend the book Island at the Center of the World by Russell Shorto. It's been one of my biggest sources of information for 3 different videos I've made on New Amsterdam now. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. Also, big thanks to everyone that helped me with this video, including my few Patreon subscribers. I'm going to be posting regularly on Patreon from now on, which will include polls that dictate future videos, old maps, and occasionally Patreon-only videos. I actually just posted my first video on Patreon, which is on sea monsters on an old map of Iceland. Memberships go a long way in supporting the channel, and pledges start at just $1 a month. And that's all for this video. Thank you all for watching.